All right, we start with the Dallas Mavericks. I'm going to go a little out of order here just to make it harder than it needs to be. Trying to work big to small here. So the two biggest acquisitions are Najee Marshall and Klay Thompson. Marshall got 3 years and 27 million, which was just a part of the non-taxpayer mid-level. I mean, we'll talk about it, but that feels like a great deal. Klay Thompson got 3 years, 50 million in a sign and trade. Outgoing in that exchange, basically, to keep it simple, was Josh Green, a 25 second and a 2031 second. Charlotte obviously landing Josh Green. Spencer Dinwiddie got a 1-year minimum deal. They traded Tim Hardaway Jr., a 2025 second and a 2028 second to the Pistons. Or maybe there's actually there's a third 2028 second there. The first was via the Heat. The second one was coming via the Clippers or Charlotte. It's the least favorable of those. For Quentin Grimes. That's not nothing. Traded Ariel Huckport, the number 58 selection in cash, to the Knicks for Melvin Aginsa, number 51. Signed Brandon Williams and Kessler Edwards to two ways. Did I miss anything there? Oh, you've got a note here. I think it's worth mentioning. Nico Harrison and Jason Kidd both got multi-year contract extensions. So we're not going to factor those into the grades necessarily because they were so long ago, June for Harrison and May for Kidd, respectively.
The Mavs were still playing in June. Wasn't the offseason for them.
That's true. Yeah. That not the case for everybody, but Dallas was still actively in the season at that point. I'll just start there. I kind of like the stability, kind of like the idea of like, hey, we were in the finals, and if not for what we might look back on as a historically great Celtics team, could have won a title. So that's the lens I'm kind of looking at this offseason through, which is just how good Dallas was last year. And I don't know how you feel, but I kind of think they got better, unless you really love Derek Jones Jr. and think he's irreplaceable. Pretty hard act to pull off when you are as good as Dallas was last year and somewhat limited in your resources, and you still make, between Marshall and Thompson, at least one of those guys, maybe both, they're going to be huge rotation / starting level contributors, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of how you would be, because I've seen some people have been skeptical of like, will the Mavs defense sustain? And I get the concerns with like, if you were to point holes in the offseason, they are taking a risk with Klay Thompson, who should fit like a glove on offense. But do you have the bodies? And by that, I mean, it's PJ Washington and then one of the bigs in Gafford or Lively to defend at a high level when Klay, Luka, and Kyrie Irving are on the floor. And if Klay's coming under the guys that not only is he going to start, but like that's probably going to be your closing setup, that would open up some questions. But I look at just the optionality the roster has elsewhere, and it's Dante Exum still on the team. And like he can, like people have talked about a lot. Well, they're losing Derek Jones Jr.'s rim pressure and athleticism. That'll be a big thing. The Mavs played faster last year. They did a great job of doing that, especially when their two stars were on the court. So yeah, they'll miss that element. But like Dante Exum can handle the smaller advantage creators. And by the way, I think what might actually be one of the sneakiest moves of the offseason is getting Quentin Grimes, who for the first 2 years of his career was doing that and draining threes. And whatever happened last year, pecking order issues in New York, he dealt with injuries. I don't necessarily even know like what went wrong for him with the Pistons before he ends up getting injured. And the fact that they gave him up in that deal, it makes you wonder, okay, is there's something weird here? But I feel like that has the potential to make a huge addition, not to where, oh, he's playing more than Najee or Marshall or Klay Thompson. But like, if you're worried about the Mavs defense during dual star minutes, maybe Quentin Grimes becomes a stretch, because do you want him defending wing positions if it comes to that? Or maybe you don't even need to worry about that because you have Luka that you can kind of move around positionally there. So I said this about the Mavs. If we had to boil it down to this, they improved their offense without, I think, torpedoing the defense or even really conceding much of it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And that really does just come down to Marshall and how closely he can approximate what Derek Jones Jr. did on defense. And, it is a little, you alluded to this, I'll just put a finer point on it. It's a little concerning that it's possible PJ Washington will be like your only plus wing defender on the floor in minutes that really matter a lot. That's assuming you go Kyrie, Klay, Luka, and then whatever centers out there. PJ Washington has to guard the best 2 or 3, I guess. And then if you also have, which, if the Mavs play the teams they intend to play deep in the playoffs, like there will be times where it's going to be a struggle, I think, defensively. And now this isn't part of the grade, but banking on Derek Lively to just get better as a defender and be the type of guy that just because he's out there, your defense is fine. Like that's Maybe. I mean, it's asking a lot for him to get to that level, but I think I generally agree. Thompson is like potentially a massive addition offensively against certain lineups, especially in the playoffs, where it's just you just cannot treat him like teams treated Jones in Washington. Like it's a total failure if he doesn't have maximum attention off the ball as a shooter. And so like I think you could make the case they got better on both ends. And just like to say otherwise is to say that Derrick Jones Jr. was just totally irreplaceable. Like, because
Which is just, by the way, he didn't really like turn on the defensive jets until after they kind of remade the roster, and it was apparent that okay, they were asking him to do less in a sense because you have PJ Washington in addition to another big aside from Derek Lively to hold their own. And by the way, neither of us have mentioned this. Part of the reason they might just be better on both ends, and so when it comes down to that, it's they clearly upgraded the offense. If you upgraded your defense, it's because you're fucking massive. Now, this team is huge.
No,
like you get the lineups pretty easily where Luka's the shortest player on the court if you wanted to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that look, Kyrie's going to miss time probably. And so you really may see those bigger lineups like a fair amount. And then the defense should just, if you're that big, it's pretty hard to be like below average defensively with all that size. Like you're going to have blow by issues on the perimeter, but like if everybody on the back line is enormous or at least has long arm, like, yeah, I think that's a great point. This has to be a high grade, right? Like, I don't know. Are we going into the A range for this? That's the other thing we should have mentioned is we're kind of going to try to establish a consensus grade and like talk each other up or down depending on how far apart we are. But
I'm trying to see if like, what did like even getting Spencer Dinwiddie at the 1 year minimum is I sometimes wonder, okay, are there too many clubs in Jason Kidd's bag now to where we're not even going to get to see Jaden Hardy, I guess, until the Western Conference Finals again, when you just like pluck him out of the bag and throw him out there. But like just between Dante Exum and Quentin Grimes and Spencer Dinwiddie, like that whole like secondary rotation, do you have too many options there? But that's such a great problem to have. I don't like what would be I wanted to ask you this very quickly. Brutally honest answer. You're coaching the Mavs. What is you don't know the matchup, but you're trying to playoff proof or matchup proof yourselves. Who are you closing with?
Well, I mean, this is just a Marshall or Klay question, right? Because I think, well, unless is the center a question to you?
No, it should be Lively.
I agree. So it's Kyrie and Luka and Lively. That's 1, 2, 3. I think Washington probably has to be out there. That's 4. So I guess I'm making it a Luka, a Klay or Marshall question.
No, I think that's what it comes down to. But I do think there might be the potential to like futz and fiddle with the Washington spot if he's not making, because he went through those like up and downs from 3 specifically. And so could you consider closing with Najee Marshall and Klay, or even like, again, depending on the matchup, like Najee Marshall and Quentin Grimes to me would make a lot of sense. This is fun. Yeah. I'm talking up all this Quentin Grimes stuff. He's going to end up probably not even playing.
I mean, for me, I think most nights I would probably go with Klay over Marshall if I'm just conceding the other 4 spots, just because of the way that a shooter like that might force defenses to really pick their poison. But like, how do we guard Luka? Because you can only send so many bodies at him, and he's just going to find the right guys. And if you have both Kyrie and Klay open as shooters, like, man, I don't know what you do as a defense. Whereas Marshall might get the Derrick Jones treatment. Like, he might be someone you leave, and that's for an opponent. That trade-off is worth like, well, he's a better defender than Klay. Like, we'll just, you know what I mean? Like, if you're looking for a weak link, I'm only thinking about, I realize as I say this, the Mavericks in like deep playoff series, because that's just, I think, how we should think of them. But I think Marshall is the guy that an opponent would be like, okay, he's out there. Now, you go at Klay on the other end, obviously. So that's the weak link there. I think I'm just prioritizing the way that if Klay is still what he was offensively or anything close to it in this new role, like, I don't know how you guard this team. That's kind of where I would lean.
What have you made of, though? And I'm actually surprised that so many Mavs fans are not believe this, but have sort of like trumpeted this up. Like, Klay is like that third guy who can do stuff off the dribble is a sentiment I don't feel entirely comfortable with. And I think that the lineups that he predominantly is going to be playing in, you're not going to need him to. But I guess if you get into kind of the 1-star combinations where Kyrie's off the floor, Luka's off the court, that might be a question. But I didn't like, when I look at this team, that's still something I would have a question of. Is is it Jaden Hardy? Is it just defaulting to Spencer Dinwiddie? I didn't even factor Klay Thompson into just like the list of potential solves.
I think if you view Klay Thompson as someone that is going to be a third creator, like for himself or for anyone else, you did not watch him last year. I just think when he dribbled the ball, I don't, if you have an expected value on each like touch or possession, it plummeted every time he dribbled. His shot selection gets worse if he's dribbling. He's just can't get by anybody. So I think as someone like, it's hard to think of someone who will benefit more if he accepts it from a reduced role that just asks him to do the things he's still great at, because there are an increasing number of things that he's not good at anymore. And I think from the Mavs perspective, like there are risks for sure in signing him, even though the number's not huge, but like the upside is you get him to just do the things he's still special at. And one of those is not being creator. That's not in the bag anymore.
He could maybe make like some of those really like quick passes, but I just didn't feel like he was a solve for that.
No.
This is all to say though, you're going to have to, I think there are maybe two teams in the league that could argue they had as good of or better off seasons than the Mavs. One of them is Philly. We already talked about them. One of them we haven't talked about yet. So you're going to need to talk me down from an A+ is the grade that I have.
Oh, I was just going to go A because I haven't really thought about the A+ range.
What did they do wrong?
Yeah, nothing.
I guess you could quibble over the price of Klay like for per year, but I'm kind of just like, he turned down more. Like the Mavs got him for less than the Lakers were offering him. It's like that's even, and you already kind of said this, but the idea that they made it to the NBA Finals and the question out of that was, are they going to be able to finagle the books to keep Derrick Jones Jr.? And they ended up like positioning themselves to get Klay, Najee Marshall, and Quentin Grimes. That's wild.
Yeah. No, I think I got to go there with you. I mean, I would have gone A, but that's because I don't really think too hard about the A+. Yeah, getting, yeah, every move is at least positive. It's just a question of how positive it is. And I think when you view their whole offseason through the lens of just this was a team in the finals and how rare it is for a team in the finals to get like pretty consequentially better, at least on paper, that's pretty hard. So let's give them an A+. Let's start it out with a bang here.
Nice.